I'm going to hand over now to the lovely mutual friends who are going to lead with some from the exercise/feedback form you filled in. Take it away, guys.
Hi guys, thanks for joining again. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's session. So obviously at the end of it, we set you an exercise here, which you can see, which was to give us one thing that you would say to your younger self. I'm sure there's probably more than one thing, to be fair, but something relevant to this, and one thing that your future self would thank you for doing today. We've got some great responses, so thank you for everybody that submitted. I'm going to read some out anonymously, don't worry, anybody who's starting to get sweaty palms. But yeah, some really good things here, and I think, you know, a lot of threads that run through them, or similar threads that run through them, which just goes to show once again, you know, that everybody kind of feels quite often the same way about their certain situation. So some of the answers here: I don't need to constantly deliver and pressure myself as it kills my creativity and intrinsic motivation. I think that is an incredibly important one, whether you're a creative or whatever you do. It's, you know, it can be a very hard industry, and yeah, you know, creativity is the most important thing, and actually, you know, that pressure can quite often be the thing which quells that. Give yourself a chance to succeed. If you don't keep moving, you'll be stuck. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's an incredibly important one. You know, as we said last week, starting is the most important thing, and keeping moving as well always helps me to kind of stay motivated, keep going. Do more, make more mistakes, and learn by doing. Yeah, once again, I think it's super important to understand that mistakes are an important part of the process. A lot of the other kind of points in here as well, we're going to be covering within the presentation. So if I don't read any of yours out, then quite often they'll be covered below. So what's one thing you could do today that your future self would be grateful for? Putting yourself out there came up. To get comfortable going to events alone, you know, kind of in the same thread as well. Yeah, it can be quite a lonely job as well. So I think getting used to being out and about there is super important. Making financial sacrifices in order to build a portfolio, something that we'll cover later about working for free. Taking time out from creative work to maintain a healthy balance, something I am terrible at. So yeah, you know, something that I've gotten better at over the last couple of years, but yeah, super important as well. And I really like this one, which is the final kind of one we got in, was to trust me again as I did when I first started out. I think that, you know, we're constantly moving, and it's quite important to remember sometimes why we're doing this, you know, and to find that passion that we had when we first started out as well. You know, you kind of find yourself sometimes plateauing, whether it be in terms of what you're doing or how you feel about what you're doing. But yeah, super important to remember why we're here. So we're going to do another little raise a hand exercise. So just using the little high five emoji at the bottom of the screen, or wherever it is on your mobile. But raise a hand here if you've ever felt that a job was out of reach. Okay. This is like pointless, if everyone gets that reference. Great, so lots of hands there. Raise a hand if you've ever felt undervalued or underpaid. Yeah, once again, that one. I'd be surprised if anyone didn't feel like that. And the final one, raise a hand if you've ever done work for free. These are all things I'm raising my hand, by the way, metaphysically. So yeah, once again, I think you can all see that these are all things that we have encountered and are not out of the ordinary at all, and things that we are going to delve into. So I'm going to hand over to Liam for the next section.
Thank you, Lawrence. Nice to see everyone again. All good. So yeah, week 2 is going to be about landing the job. So we're going to cover some key topics, and hopefully by the end of it, you will feel a bit more prepared or more comfortable. I'll have some more insights of how you can get your first job, or yeah, get stuck in. Maria, did you have a quick question before we start? Was that an accident by the look of your face? That's fine. No worries. All good. So yeah, as we said last week, Start by starting is sort of a key phrase, and opportunities can be where you least expect them. So for this section, I sort of wanted to share a little bit more of what I do and how I got into that position. So for those of you who remember from last week's session, my main role is head of video at DJ Mag, which is electronic music magazine. And I've been doing that for the last 7 years. But how I got there is quite an interesting story. So I always had a passion for film. I studied film at both college and university, but on the side, I was working in Top Man and Top Shop, which is a clothing store. And I was just selling skinny jeans. But at the time, I was living with a very good friend of mine who was also studying film. And we sort of had an itch to big up the Top Shop crew. Love it. But yeah, at the time, we both had an itch to sort of get out of sort of like retail and work a job that was a bit more relevant to what we wanted to do in the future and what we were studying. So we came across this advertisement for a place called Videoblog, and they were looking for part-time editors and camera operators. And to be honest, the job advertisement wasn't that appealing. It was like 6-hour shifts. The pay was a lot lower than what we were actually getting in retail. It was in this like really remote studio in Streatham, which is hard to get to if you know London. And essentially what they were looking for was someone to shoot green screen videos or edit green screen videos of junior presenters talking about celebrity gossip and sports news. So it wasn't amazing, but it was a step towards film compared to selling skinny jeans. So my housemate decided to pass. He thought the job wasn't good enough. And then I spent the next 7 months at Videoblog. So I sort of just share what I was working on. That was my like day-to-day, basically doing celebrity gossip and Love Island news, which isn't quite what I'm doing now. But yeah, essentially what happened, I did that for 7 months. But basically what happened was I realized halfway through my time there that people were going to live events and that they were doing live coverage from like random red carpets or film festivals. And I was like, hey, that looks a lot cooler than what I'm doing. So I switched over and I said, hey, can I do these events? And it took me to a film festival called Dock and Roll. And there was a documentary screening on a film called Raving Iran, which is about 2 Iranian DJs who got exiled from their country for playing techno. Now, I'm a massive techno fan, music fan. This really like intrigued me, and I was chatting away to the people at the festival. And as part of my coverage, I had to interview a woman, and we started speaking. And then it turns out that woman worked for DJ Mag, so I was really passionate about music, knew that I could use a camera, and said, hey, why don't you do an internship, or I'll introduce you. And I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. And that's essentially my first into DJ Mag. That was 7 years ago, and now I'm the head of video. People often say, so lucky to have my job, and I'm very grateful. And actually my friend who passed on that original job says, oh, you're so lucky, man. But the reality is that you create your own luck, and then it comes from sort of taking a leap of faith and, taking that initiative to be like, I'm going to stop selling skinny jeans here. I want to do something a bit different. Taking the leap of, okay, this isn't the ideal job. I'm not really interested in green screen videos about Love Island or Kim Kardashian. But it's a step in the right direction, and eventually it will lead you to places. So sort of that's my story of how I got there. And it's sort of similar story for a lot of people, just making a change, start by starting, and, opportunities can come when you least expect them, but they won't if you're stuck at home or you're in an environment that they might not be. So that's how I got my role at DJ Mag. So to sort of start the session, we wanted to talk about something that someone asked last week, and some people put in the feedback form as well. And is it okay to work for free? Because this is something that will probably come up when you first are starting out, building a portfolio and trying to find some clients. Is when do I work for free? Is it okay to work for free? And what we're sort of talking about is who is gaining more. And we have some sort of situations here that we want some people to sort of interact with. So we're just going to show you a few sort of job ads that we've changed so that we don't display who done them, but these are very real and we've taken them. And then we can sort of have a discussion about whether you think it's right to take on this job, and if so, why? And if not, why you wouldn't take it on. And it's a blurred topic. I don't want to feel pressured. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's very unique to the person, but I think it's good to have a discussion. So the first one here is win a chance to shoot at Made Up Festival 2024. Looking for photographers who want to take pictures of the world's biggest artists and have them featured on our socials. Send us your portfolios. So does someone want to raise a hand if they have an opinion on that and whether they would take that job? Yep, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would take that job because it would actually be featured on their socials and it's the world's biggest artist. So I would definitely do that.
Okay, great. And Kat, I see your hands raised.
Hi. Yeah, I would take it because I feel like it seems like this opportunity, while it's unpaid, like there is actually something to gain from it for someone who's just trying to build their portfolio. Like there's a lot in shooting like people who people know, if that makes sense. And I think that would be quite a rewarding experience in itself as well. So yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, agree. It's very good. You can it's a very good portfolio builder. You'd have opportunity to take pictures of big artists and then something to add to the portfolio. The two things that me and LJ would flag from this post though is that for this is a big no, is that it's a festival. So everyone at the festival is getting paid. There'll probably already be a media team there getting paid. So if everyone else is getting paid, why shouldn't you? And also the feature of having your content on their socials and being used is essentially just selling them tickets for free. You're adding to their marketing value. So something to bear in mind is sort of who's gaining more. And I think in this one, maybe the festival will be gaining more than yourself, but also no issue and changing it. So yeah, LJ, do you want to do the next one?
Yeah, just to finalize on that one. There is a difference between, I think, for me, you approaching a festival like this and asking them if whether you can come and cover it, as opposed to them reaching out when they full well will have a media budget. They will have a marketing budget. There's, they shouldn't really be putting out, posts like these, which would, could be seen as using people to kind of come in and shoot for free when there will always be a budget available. And to be honest, these days as well, festivals should be giving opportunities to people to be able to kind of come and do these sorts of things. So yeah, I know you had something you want to say on that one.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. So it says that they would feature you on their socials, but does that mean they would be crediting you with those photos, or is that unclear?
I mean, yeah, it's always a bit of a grey area, and to be honest, we've, even when we're getting paid as well, quite often getting the credit on socials. I mean, that's a whole other grey area and probably something we could speak for length on at some point. But yeah, I mean, quite often, and we'll go into it later as well, that yeah, it's the value of that tag can be quite often, worth more than the actual pay itself.
Yeah.
Carmela?
Yeah, I think for me it would be important to know like which is the festival. Of course, like this one, because we only have the information of world's biggest artist, doesn't seem really like small or independent. So I think if it's something that is like more in line with your values, even if it's a festival, but like maybe they donate to charity or they do something that I don't know is in line with what you think, maybe I would consider it. But like if it's super commercial, then if it's a little bit unfair, even if you're okay.
Absolutely, yeah, and plenty of people, will be getting, for example, free tickets to Glastonbury, which is something obviously which has a value to you to want to go to, sort of thing, to go and shoot for a few hours. So there's a real difference there. Maria, final one, and we'll move on to this next one.
Hi, I'm from Argentina. A lot of like festivals work here by giving like free tickets for you, so you're the cover. I don't do photos, but I do a lot of content, and they give you a lot of free tickets, which in our case we sell it. So that's how we like make some money. I know it's not like the best idea to get it, but in South America we like go hand with what we got, but we do a lot of those shops.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, sometimes you got to make do with what you got, I guess. Cool. So this next one we've got, I'm looking for a videographer to help edit my weekly podcasts. No budget, but I can offer you exposure to my 250,000 social media following. So any comments on this one? My queue's gone a bit strange here. I can't quite see who's come up last.
Anna or Eleanor.
Anna or Eleanor. We'll give it Anna first.
Okay. I find exposure to be something that you get off Mount Everest when you climb it. And I'm at this point now in my life that I think that if you don't have enough budget to help people to help you, I mean, it's very subjective because it becomes like if you have people that come from a disadvantaged background, then you are willing to do skill exchange. But if you're working at you have a weekly podcast or working at a big festival, then you should have the budget to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree on that one. Eleonora?
Yeah, I don't think I'd take this one, not because I would be like against to do unpaid work, but I just don't see how that would help me because it just seems more like I'm helping them. And at this point, if I'm doing something for free, not something that I enjoy, then it's not worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something I heard a little while ago is it's all about an ecosystem, and it's all about if you're taking something out, putting something back in again, and it constantly being in that cycle. And if you feel like you're a part of that cycle, then great. But if you feel like you're not, then that's the point when actually you should start to question it. Liam, I'll hand over to you for the next one.
Yep. Yeah. Go on. Stephen, before we move on, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, I was just going to say it seems like a big investment of time to help with weekly videos as well, for no money, to get exposed to people who are fans, not necessarily people that are going to come like benefit you or give you future opportunities. They're more just being exposed to the followers of this influencer or whoever it is.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of my points I was about to say. And the big thing that stands out for me is weekly. That's quite a lot of time to give up for free. And also exposure as well. Like it's worth knowing that exposure is worth something. If it gets your image out there and your brand out there and you out there, that's great. But at what point on the 4th or 5th week is that exposure going to really pay off? I think after the first week, that's probably, first 1 or 2 weeks, you probably reach the limit of people that might want to hit you up to do more content. So, the weekly thing was a big flag for me. And then the last one is looking for someone to shoot behind the scenes for my music video, spent all our budget on the studio, but can cover travel and food and give you tickets to my show and my latest single on vinyl. So any opinions on this one? Yeah, go on, Kat.
I would do this because at least they're covering expenses, and like while they can't give you money, like they're saying, oh, we'll give you tickets to the show, we'll give you vinyl. Everyone loves vinyl, and also I think like there's really good value in doing BTS like on music videos. When I did it, like that was the first time I did it. After that, like things just kept snowballing from there, and I think it's really, really valuable. Even though it's just travel and food, which isn't a lot, the experience is worth it 100%.
And I think Free and Kurt also had the hands raised.
I was just gonna say it's worth it just because like this person sounds super wholesome. They're like giving like this like tickets and like vinyl. It's like you can tell this person cares, and like they're probably like a vibey person, so they're probably gonna like gas you up to loads of other people. So I'd probably say yeah on this one.
Nice. And yeah, go on, Kurt. We haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, I think those guys mostly covered it, but I quite like the transparency of just being like, we spent all our budget on the studio, so I get why you can't maybe cover the cost. But also it's about, I think it would be about the artist for me. If there's an artist I love, I'd be all over that.
Perfect. And yeah, last one from Martha real quickly. Oh, sorry, you're just on mute, Martha.
Yeah, I think that like for me personally, it's about like the whole context in these three situations, if you like compare to each other, because I've done this volunteer thing. Like I was in Sweden, and I even like paid for my food and like staying there because it was really valuable for me for this experience. So I mean, like, yeah, it's about context and what's important for you, and maybe like you're gaining like some like big connections, and maybe you need like some experience to like upgrade your technical skills. So yeah, in general, like I wouldn't hesitate to like take this job, and of course, like this one particularly seems like one-time thing. So it's quite relevant, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, this one it's great. So it's one shoot, so it's not that time consuming. Again, they give off good vibes, and then maybe they can't offer you money, but they're offering something, and it's not going to cost you anything because they're going to cover travel and food, which is important. So that sort of brings us to our next point. So basically, you need to ask yourself, what exactly am I gaining? And that's unique to everyone. If you want to shoot for the first example that we gave you, that's not a problem, because of maybe that's exactly what you want to do. Maybe that festival really appeals to you, the artists appeal for you, and yeah, you want to do it. But ask yourself, am I the only one not getting paid? I think this is an important thing. There is money there is budgets, and even if it is just to cover the cost of expenses and travel, that's completely fine. And yeah, the big one is this going to cost me money? If they're not covering travel and food expenses and the rest of it, some of these things can actually cost quite a lot of money. We had it with one of our creators recently, shooting a festival for free, and yeah, they ended up spending like £100 a day just to be there. So it's not ideal. And quickly just going back a slide, we shared this last week, but it's quite relevant, and it's from Elijah. If you work for a corporation and you're emailing an artist about working for free, stop and ask yourself why. Because yeah, often there's budgets, these people are getting paid a lot of money. And if everyone around you is getting paid money, there should be money for you as well. So yeah, moving on to the next section, I'll hand back over to LJ.
Cool. So the connections are the key to your jobs. People always say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, but I actually think that that's not true. It's about who knows you. So I've got a little story here about kind of how I've made myself known over the years, from kind of when I first started in uni. So I did a fine art degree at Cardiff School of Art and Design, started in 2011, and at that point, really, kind of photography wasn't even like in my mind as a full-blown career. I was running events at the time, and I met the student brand manager at Red Bull. We became quite good mates, and was always tried to make sure that I was always kind of seen as being around at some of the events he did or activations, and being on hand to help. When it came to deciding who'd take on this role, when he was leaving after his third year, I interviewed for it and was told that I was the standout candidate. And although I was quite heavily underqualified, they knew that my approach to kind of networking and constantly being involved was enough to kind of make me the right person for this role. I got to work in the field marketing team across events such as Field Day and Download Festival, doing some of the activations there. Something called Revolutions in Sound, for some of you might remember, where they put a DJ in every single pod of the London Eye and live streamed it. Which was absolute carnage, to be honest, because there's no toilets on the London Eye, and plenty of Red Bull was being drunk. So yeah, I leave the imagination to run wild on that one. Now, obviously, this is an insane opportunity to work within this team, but I kind of found myself not wanting to work within marketing. But whilst I was at a lot of these events, obviously amazing sorts of things, I was always taking photos and sort of slowly building an early portfolio. So yeah. I mean, obviously, not everybody gets to kind of go and work for Red Bull early on, but took this opportunity to start to build things out for myself. Around the same time, I started taking kind of photos and videos for other events that I was running. I started an event called Origins in Bath with an old schoolmate of mine. And the venue that we did it in had their own photographer, but it was a bit kind of studenty. And so, we wanted something with a little bit more edge. So I started taking photos of that one as well. going back to last week, still on very much on my kind of kit camera and kit lens. So, and starting to kind of cut my teeth there. And so, Liam, if you want to go to the next slide, some of my very early photos, and some famous faces you might recognise. Honey Dijon there, Helena Hauff and Bless Madonna. So obviously, you know, we've got Peggy Gou and Scream there as well. So bearing in mind this was about 10 years ago now as well, you know, just being there and being present allowed me to start to take photos of also future headliners and future stars, you know, and my kind of portfolio caught up with itself as these artists started to get bigger as well. So this is a kind of great opportunity of kind of being there and just being active and at the forefront of, you know, of things. So kind of by this point we're about sort of 2014, 2015. In 2018 I decided to go to Ibiza. A friend of mine was working at a management company, and he was assisting on Hot Since '82, who has a residency out there. I actually went to Ibiza because my now wife wanted a break. She was a midwife from her kind of work, so we thought, what better place to go over there? So I decided to pack up and go over there, and yeah, worked out through my contacts who I knew, and sort of said to my mate, just give me a chance at it. Hot Since '82 was doing a residency at Pasha, and I basically got you know, a chance to shoot the first week sort of thing to see how it go, which is a bit of a gamble, obviously taking your whole life there to know whether, you know, you're even going to get the job. Thankfully I did get the job, and it resulted in me doing a full residency with Hot Since '82 at Pasha, and also my first DJ Mag coverage. The image on the left you'll see within that article on the right. So added to that as well, Hot Since '82's team looked after Pete Tong's team as well. So on the next slide you'll see I got to shoot Blue Marlin as well. So that's Virgil Abloh back to back with Black Coffee at Pete Tong's residency, which is a pretty wild sort of thing. As bearing in mind, if you've been to Blue Marlin, it's about sort of 300 capacity sort of thing. But it just kind of just goes to show each one of these things led to the next thing. Just constantly being in front of people, making sure that people were aware that, you know, this was what I wanted to do, this is what I loved, you know, and just kind of, you know, having a little bit of bravado as well about my work allowed me to kind of, you know, quite quickly go from not having really ever shot an event in sort of, you know, 2011, 2012 in uni to, you know, 2018, 5-6 years later, you know, shooting things like this. So that's that. So Liam, do you want to take on the next bit?
Yeah, nice. Didn't know about Virgil Abloh Black Coffee. That's a pretty big one, mate. Nice. So yeah, how do people get to know you? And a big part of that is presenting your work, which was one of the questions we received in the feedback form, about how we present our work and when we should. And again, there's no right or wrong answer, but we can shed some light on some things we think. So less is more, but something is always better than nothing. So don't feel pressured. You have to be sharing all the time, and everything you do has to be posted everywhere. But if you're not posting anything at all, then you're really probably not going to be out there at all. So something is always better than nothing. So we want to highlight a few of our creatives and how they present their work. So this is Fraser Hawkshaw, who's a videographer. And this is basically the whole of Fraser's Instagram. It's just 8 squares. There's 6 there. But he's basically just honed in on one style of his work. And that's multicam editing and streaming. And that's sort of what he wants to be hired for. And again, he's doing weekly work, but he's just posting the best things and using it as sort of like a shop window. And it's good to sort of remind yourself that, you know, when you look at a shop window, you don't see everything in the shop, you just see the best bits. So you don't need to be posting everything, you don't need to feel pressure to be posting everything, but having some of your best bits, so that if a client does click on your profile, you'll send it out, they can be like, okay, that's cool, I get what you do, it's enough to see. And then the complete opposite is Benedict. Benedict's one of our OG photographers. Met him at Boardmasters Festival 2016 or something crazy like that, and his journey's been impressive. And he's posting 3 times a week, and I just love the fact how he's almost just like broken away from the stigma of being nervous to share his work. And yeah, he's just really proud to post what he's doing. There's a real nice mixture of stuff from live events to the F1 to press shots to more like club stuff to bar stuff. So again, you know, if that works for you and you're proud of your work and you want to show it, then that's also completely fine. And you know, just bear in mind there's a nice range of stuff. And you know, if you click on Benedict's profile, Fraser's profile, it's very obvious very quickly what they do and what their skills are and what you can hire them for. So yeah, I think LJ is going to shed a bit more as well.
Yep, thanks, mate. I just remembered that black coffee and Virgil Abloh were called a white coffee at the time, which is so yeah. Going on to kind of how to present yourself again. So there's no right or wrong answer as to how to present yourself. Ultimately, think about what a client wants to see. If you shoot both photo and video, then make sure your portfolio shows both. I know lots of creatives who have amazing videos that aren't showcased on the Instagram. So clients have said that they look more like a photographer, which ultimately kind of puts them on the back foot. You know, if you want to be doing both, you know, there's no excuse to kind of saying I haven't got the time to post these sorts of things. Even just a couple of bits is enough, rather than having to direct somebody, you know, over to a different Instagram to be able to find this stuff. So one of the questions we got asked was about presenting work. I mean, this presentation that you're seeing at the moment was done through Canva, which is a completely free asset. You can kind of pay to have upgraded versions, but there is a way to use it for free. It's so intuitive, you know, the way that it kind of presents stuff is kind of changed the game in terms of the old school Microsoft presentations, PowerPoint presentations that I'm sure some of us used to do as kids. You know, we use it a lot. We've used this for high-end presentations to, you know, big clients, and I think it works as a great resource. You know, so you've got your Instagram, you've got things like Canva, you know, websites these days, even things like Squarespace and Wix. I've built you know, numerous websites through Squarespace. Once again, super intuitive, obviously slightly different as you kind of have to pay for a domain there. So you know, you've got different options here. I think the main thing is that you're showcasing what you want to showcase, and make sure that, you know, when you look at it as something, you know, which is said quite often is your top 9 with Instagram, which obviously you're just seeing here with Benedict's. You know, does your top 9 reflect who you are and how you want to present yourself? So question here, do you expect to see a website when hiring somebody? Absolutely not. I do not have a website. I've never had a website. I've talked about having a website for the whole of my career and I still don't have one. It's firmly on the list and probably will stay on the list for a little while longer. We don't have a website. We do not have a website. We have a landing page with a rotating logo and that is it. Absolutely not. I think, you know, obviously it's great if you want to have a website and if you feel like that's the best way to present your work, because sometimes, you know, I mean, obviously these days horizontal photos don't really live on Instagram, where some of your work may be horizontal, so therefore it's, you know, maybe a slightly better place to view it as it would be on a desktop, but definitely not on that one. Cool. I think that's that. I'll hand over to you, Liam, for the next section.
Yeah, just following on that, I think you just need to find what works for you. If you have a website, that's great. And if you're comfortable on that website and you can just send it straight to the client, brilliant. If you only have an Instagram, but you're comfortable with that Instagram showcasing what you need to do and you can send it straight to the client, brilliant. I don't have a website. I don't have a dedicated Instagram for my creative stuff. I have a portfolio video show reel, which is probably a year out of date now, if not more. But I just know I'm comfortable just sending that straight to a client if they need proof of what I've done. And I have a little deck saying that who I've worked for in the past. But yeah, it's about finding what works for you. But yeah, there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to have something to hand. So yeah, that's what I'd get across there. So the next section is about how much do you charge? So yeah, moving on from free work, maybe now you're in a situation where someone is approaching you to work and they're asking you, what's your fee? If someone asks you what your fee is, your first reply should always be, what's your budget? And they'll probably reply saying, what's your fee? And you'll be on some sort of Mexican standoff or something. We're actually going to get t-shirts with that made because it's literally all that ever happens. But the first thing you should always ask is, yeah, what's their budget? Because potentially your fee might be, in your head, £500. That's a made up number. And then all of a sudden their budget was actually 2,000, and you just talked yourself out of £1,500. And yeah, or maybe they're thinking to themselves, oh, maybe they're not the person we need because our budget's a lot more. That's happened to me before. When we had one of our first big corporate clients come in, I charged them a rate that we usually would charge like a club event, and LJ quickly swooped in and was just like, no, don't do it. It's Adidas, they'll have more money. So always just ask for the budget first, because yeah, you might earn an extra bit of money. But also on the opposite, if their budget is completely lower than your expected fee, maybe it just saves you some time going back and forth, and you can be like, this is not the job for me. The next thing is always asking your peers. I think you should get rid of the stigma of not talking about money. Yeah, if you're unsure about what to charge for a job, maybe you can ask someone that's done a similar job or worked for a similar client. So yeah, always feel free to ask. I mean, my first ever job I spoke about last week was I was already at Snowboarding Festival, and Glitterbox asked me to, you're not peerless anymore, you have everyone in this group, so it's fine. But yeah, I was at Snowboarding Festival, Glitterbox were like, hey, you're here, can you film these clips? I was like, yeah, sure. And I had no idea what to charge. And who did I ask? I asked LJ. LJ gave me a price, and yeah, there we go. And they said yes, and it was easy as that. And then how much should you charge? You should always also consider some variables. So assess the job. Ask about the deliverables. If they want loads of stuff, then maybe you need to charge more, because you also need to consider your time. You may be only on a 2-hour shoot, but maybe all the stuff they want is going to take 2 days to edit. Potentially what they actually want in terms of deliverables is a 30-second recap video, but actually it requires you to be at the whole event, and that could be a whole day, 2 whole days. So yeah, really consider and assess the job, and don't feel rushed to give them a price. Ask these questions, ask for a budget, ask your peers, assess the job, ask the right questions, and then come up with a price. And that's completely fine. And then the next one is, if you're on the stage of taking on the job, here's some things to sort of consider when taking them on. So the first one is agreeing a fee. So don't take on the job without agreeing a fee. Don't turn up to the shoot or the event or wherever it is and not knowing how much you're getting paid, because yeah, it's just not a good idea. Setting boundaries. So you need to agree on the amount of deliverables. A big one for us is agreeing on the amount of feedback people can give. We always offer 1 round of feedback for free. Anything more than that, we then going to start charging for more editing time. That's a big one. I'm sure people have experienced this in the past, but you do a shoot for a client, you come back, they give you some feedback, you do the edits, and all of a sudden there's a whole heap of feedback they didn't mention last time, and then you just going around in circles, spending more and more time, not getting paid any more than you were originally. So set a boundary up front. Say, hey, this is what I'm going to deliver. You get 1 round of feedback, and then anything after that, it's free. Another one as well that we experience is people trying to change the media type. If you can take photos and video, we often get people getting hired to take videos of an event, and then on the slide, or can you just take a few photos too? That needs to come at an extra cost, because that's them saving budget by hiring a different person and setting boundaries. I'm here to do video, photo wasn't agreed, or I was here to do photo, video wasn't agreed. Timelines. So yeah, set a deadline and agree on the deadline, and that goes for yourself. If you've agreed to deliver content within 3 days, make sure you deliver it in 3 days, but also set that timeline so that the day after the event they're not hassling you for, oh, sorry, we want to put something on our socials tomorrow, sorry, that wasn't agreed. And a big thing about this is communication, and we'd always suggest communicating on email if possible, but at least WhatsApp, because at least you have some form of written proof that these conversations happened. In-person chats happen, on the phone calls also happen, but send a follow-up email and just say, hey, this is what we spoke about, follow-up text, hey, this is what we agreed on, just so that if anything goes wrong, you can say, sorry, but please can you refer to this, and this is what we agreed on, and you can always go back to that. So yeah, there's some tips, and then back to you, LJ.
Great, thanks, Liam. Yeah, I mean, the amount of times I've been asked to kind of shoot a couple of photos on top of it, you know, and I think you know, once again, revisions on stuff, feedback. I think quite often that clients don't realize, you know, just how much time opening up a project might, you know, take, and you know, doing what might seem like a sort of small tweak to somebody, you know, actually can take quite a bit of time as well. You know, it's the same as well. You know, I edit my photos through Lightroom, but I'm using Premiere for my video sort of stuff. It's a whole different process sort of thing. So these are the sorts of things that can maybe some clients don't quite understand how long they take. There's a couple of questions on here, so I'll take these as well as on this subject. So a few times I've taken on a job and not brought up the money, therefore I don't end up getting paid. Yeah, obviously that's a kind of the worst situation you can end up getting into. I mean, for the content coming up bad or not up to par with a paid job, what's your thoughts on this? We don't invoice until the job is finished. And, you know, I know a lot of people sometimes might take you know, deposits, especially if they're larger jobs, then we will do that. But you know, quite often the time spent actually getting something paid before a job, you know, and we often get jobs come in, you know, that are for that evening or in an hour or this weekend or whatever it is. So realistically, not going to be able to kind of get paid beforehand as well. So yeah, there's usually a bit of a period where you can make sure that the client is happy with the work before you then end up getting paid afterwards. I think Liam's got a point on that one.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you can always go back on the fee if things don't go up to scratch. You know, agree on the fee, you know, agree what you're going to deliver, and worst case scenario, something bad happens, which it does sometimes, it happens to everyone. Then you can just have that open dialogue and say, look, you've got some of the content, yeah, I know this didn't work out, can we meet in the middle, like 50% of the fee, just to cover the time I've spent, you know, and often or not, clients are happy just to talk about it. And I think, as I said last week, yeah, it's about, you know, when those sort of mistakes happen, just be open and honest and quick to resolve them. But definitely don't have the fear of like taking on paid work because you might make a mistake, because of you might not, and then you smashed it, and then you can move on to the next one.
To say that next question, or jump back in. So yeah, another question there as well. A lot of artists I work with don't say when they need the edit by, which is quite stressful. I don't know how quickly the edit is expected of me. Timeline is one of the most important things you can do, and you know, not only getting that timeline as well, but sticking to that timeline as well. You know, the age old under promise and over deliver will be your savior always. You know, work out how much time you think it's gonna take to do the job. You know, add in maybe a couple of other factors if you've got a couple of other projects on. You know, I know last week that I had a lot of projects. You know, even though I allowed the time in between them, all kind of came crashing in all at one point, you know, with revisions, etc. People taking a little bit, you know, too much time to come back with their revisions, which meant that I ended up working kind of 3-4 hour, you know, 3-4 days where I was doing, you know, 10-12 hours a day sort of thing, just to get back on top of it. So those sorts of things you can't, you know, always equate for. So put in some extra buffer time for you. Once again, we were saying earlier about looking after yourself, you know, try not to kill yourself with these sorts of things. And you know, quite often as well, hopefully you'll get to the point where actually you've got, you know, lots of jobs to choose from, and then you need to be a bit more careful as to, you know, whether you can actually stick to what you've decided with these people. Do we provide clients with contracts outlining the terms beforehand? We don't use contracts, no. Something to know as well is that anything through emails is legally binding. I think a lot of people don't know that and don't realize that as well, and it's a good reason to keep things on emails. You know, outline all of the things that you've mentioned, so your deliverables, your timeline, the fee, dates, timings, all of these sorts of things. If you've got something back to refer back to, as opposed to, you know, a WhatsApp voice note, which also does work, but always just having that one email. I think once you've worked out what the client wants, when you're doing it and when you're going to be delivering it, just recap it back to them. You know, it helps to make sure that you're both, you know, in the know as to what is expected on both sides as well, because quite often that can change as well, you know, especially with timings or whatever it is. And suddenly, you know, even last week we had somebody saying, you know, doors open at 12 sort of thing, when actually, you know, it was 1 o'clock and it was all across, you know, all of the communications we've had, which obviously helps. So one of my kind of last points on this is just reaching out. Someone put in the responses from last week that they'd actually reached out to an events company in Lebanon, from having the kind of feeling that they had some of the credibility of being on this program as well to do it, which is great. We love that. We'd love to kind of hear more of that as well if you guys decide to. So reaching out to clients for me is something that I've kind of lacked in for a long time. I always kind of thought I was busy enough not to actually need to, but it meant that all the jobs that I ended up covering were those that other people wanted me to cover and not the things that I personally wanted to do. So recently I've actually been isolating things that really capture my motivation and imagination and going towards them and reaching out to those clients. I've even taken a slightly lower rate to be able to do some shows, just because I knew that ultimately I've been moving in the right direction that I want to be in, rather than allowing the flow to kind of take me to places that I may not necessarily want to end up finding myself in. So when it comes to reaching out, try to find out what the client is either looking for, if they have an idea, if they don't have much direction, then try to isolate something that they are missing. So maybe even if they're just a bar serving cocktails, they could benefit with a how-to video on one of the best-selling drinks, or maybe, you know, as we said last week as well, an upcoming artist with a release, a producer doing a studio jam of their latest track, or a singer doing an ad-lib version. More often than not, we're trying to solve a problem with the content that we're creating. Maybe they're not getting the exposure they want, or they need more sales. Maybe they're making an announcement, or they need help pushing themselves. Once you isolate that problem, it becomes a whole lot easier to find something of value to give to your client. So yeah, I think that covers everything that we wanted to talk about. We've left a little bit more time as well for some more kind of questions and answers, and you guys gave some questions as well to us in the feedback sheet as well. So I'm just going to check the comments as well to see if there's anything else in here. Okay, Liam's answered this question here, but if you're asked to do landscape and Reels videos, how do you approach this? Reels always with a phone. I mean, this is a bit of an interesting one. We for a while were shooting a lot of stuff natively in portrait, and actually have decided to start shooting more stuff in landscape as well, so that we can use it afterwards as well to crop. There's no right and wrong answer, but quite often clients will say, and it's a good thing to ask them as well, do you want this, you know, natively shot in that, or do you want both of them as well? Do you think it's important to live in a bigger city to get to bigger jobs, better jobs? I mean, I moved to London to be able to do this, and obviously it does help where there is, you know, stuff out there. But in this age, you know, where content, you know, and working from home or wherever it is, you know, you can be creating edits quite easily outside of you know, where you are. Obviously, shooting stuff is a very different thing, but you know, we have one of our clients, our creative Saskia, she was based in Brighton for a long while and would travel into London when the jobs came up, you know, and you know, quite often we can get that travel covered and those sorts of things as well. So yeah, don't use it as a limitation on there. Any more questions on here? Liam, do you want to take a couple?
Yeah, so there's a good one there about how do we maintain connections because everyone is always so busy. Yeah, everyone is always so busy, but I think sort of what you need to do is just sort of keep on them. You know, you're in charge of your communication as much as they are. So if you're not getting replies from emails, just give them a nudge. Especially if it's stuff like we get it quite often where you know, you need some extra assets to finish off your edit, but you know, they're not replying, and then you're going to miss the deadline. So stuff like that, just keep emailing. Maybe if you have a contact number, try another means of contact. But yeah, I wouldn't feel sort of like, I don't know what the word is, but I wouldn't feel like against, you shouldn't feel like embarrassed to keep chasing someone or like to keep nudging them. Like you're there to do a service and you're trying to do it to the best of your ability. And if they're stopping you, then, you need to make that contact. And then, as someone with literally no experience in this industry yet, what can I do to make myself more appealing to employers and companies? My first suggestion would be to maybe look local and look small and start to build a portfolio. I think we discussed this last week as well, but if you look local and small, there'll always be someone that needs something. Maybe it's a local artist that needs shooting, press shots, press campaign, maybe their events, maybe a venue, something like that. And also if you go small, then maybe they won't have the budget to pay you or pay you that much, but then they get some great content out of it. You get a chance to build your portfolio and then you can go from there. So yeah, I think if you want to get noticed, then definitely start to build a portfolio. And I think one thing we haven't covered, which we were going to cover, was about the idea of starting small doesn't always necessarily mean like small as in sort of local DJ or talent, that sort of vibe. It could also be like small in terms of your role. You can gain a lot of experience by shadowing people. Bigger projects, like we had a 10-person team at the Michael Beebe event a couple of weeks ago, and a couple of the people within that team were like still at university because they wanted some experience, and we just covered their travel and expenses on the day, so they could just see how it worked and be a part of that team and network and meet some other creatives and get some real life experience. And often or not, you'll find those bigger projects, stuff like festivals, will have a huge media team. You could reach out and say, hey, I don't have loads of experience, but I really just want to shadow some people, understand how it learns, and take on a smaller role. And then, that's a great place to start. So yeah, definitely think about that. Any other questions before we move on to wrap up? And we've got one more little exercise as well. LJ's got a question.
No question, but actually answering some questions as well from the feedback sheet as well. There was a question in there that said, have you seen clubs / events / festivals / artists hire someone specifically for shooting and posting live Instagram stories? Yes, absolutely. We even shot last Friday, Charlie XCX, her boiler room at Amnesia, and we had somebody there specifically shooting iPhone videos and doing live social media updates. So yes, one of the biggest brands in the world and one of the biggest clubs in the world for what you could argue is one of the biggest artists in the world right now, in terms of that scene, doing exactly that. So yes, there's always a kind of an angle for everybody, as I said, from kind of bottom to top these days. We got any other questions here? Oh yes, another one was, how much of a role does personal branding / experience in having a portfolio play? I think you could separate those two things as well, personal branding and portfolio, because I think personal branding can quite often be the way that you come across to people and the way that you present yourself, as opposed to somewhere specifically where your work is held. I think especially with teams of people, the person and their personality can be incredibly important, especially in the fact that you're in large teams in quite often stressful environments, as well as how can you handle yourselves within those sorts of places. So if that falls under personal branding, I think that's an incredibly important thing to be thinking about in the way that you put yourself across to people. So we're going to move on to some key takeaways here. So firstly, opportunities can be where you least expect them, so hunt them out. Working for free, who's gaining the most in this situation? What are you gaining? It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And presenting your work, something is better than nothing. Those are our key takeaways from this week. So this week's exercise for next week is to write a pitch to us Not obviously pitching to us, but a small paragraph just explaining who you are and what you do. Write it with a client in mind and pitch an idea to them. It can be big or small, either someone local you want to work with or a dream client of yours. So this would be the pitch that client receives straight off the bat. We'd love to see the way that you do this, and we can kind of help maybe to steer you towards, some things you're doing right, or maybe some things you could do slightly better within these. So that's the exercise for next week. And then we've got a couple of resources as well, same as last week. I don't know if anybody kind of had a look at some of the resources from last week as well. But these are the ones for this week. Want to give us the next slide, Liam? Yeah, there you go. So there's a book called The War of Art. This is one of my favorite books. It's a very small and thin book, which is great because sometimes it doesn't feel too kind of arduous dragging it out to give it a read. It's made up of very small paragraphs. I'll pull out a couple for next week as well, see if any of you have actually read it as well, and see if we can get some little nuggets from there. But it's great. Yeah, it kind of doesn't feel like you're trudging through too much text in it. Nice little broken up blocks. The next one, this is something that was showed to me recently, but there's a girl on TikTok who basically isolates opportunities that she has found within, I think, that week, and it's based around an app as well that hosts a lot of those opportunities. There's some really cool stuff in there as well. So if you guys are looking for opportunities, it's a good one to go for. And then this last one, this is a photographer called Vadim. He's from Ukraine and he's recently moved to London. Absolutely unbelievable photographer. I mean, you can see there from those images, like they're just stunning. And I just taken part in a challenge that he did, which was like a natural light challenge. He's always doing workshops. He's always doing stuff on his stories, especially at the moment, about how he got into what he was doing. And yeah, just kind of lifting the veil of, someone that shoots for very, very high-end publications. So that's that. That's everything for this week. And look at that, 7:30 on the dot.
Amazing.
So that was that this week. I don't know if anybody has any last kind of questions for us on there, some final parting moments. But next week will be on connections and clients. There were quite a few questions on this already that obviously we didn't cover this week because we've saved them for next week. Yeah. This will be next week. So any questions in here?
I was kind of wondering, actually, who is someone that you haven't worked with yet that is kind of like on your dream hit list, and how are you trying to get their attention?
I absolutely love Palace, the clothing brand, and have wanted to do something for them for a little while. I've started to slowly isolate who does all of their stuff as well, who their creative directors are as well. And I've kind of set myself a little bit of a challenge to shoot an almost kind of fake Palace video, as I would do it if I was going to do a piece for them, sort of thing. I noticed there's a guy called John T, who's an amazing photographer, who had a viral reel of him saying, well, he did a couple of them, and it was basically like shooting a fake Dr. Martens campaign or shooting a fake D&G campaign until I get noticed. And he actually did go on to go and do a D&G campaign. You can see it in the comments as well. The creative director of Dolce & Gabbana message sort of saying, love this, check DMs sort of thing. So yeah, that's one for me. Liam, I don't know if you got anyone?
God, I'm so jaded. I would love to work with people like Fisher. I always actually wanted to do content with Fisher because he's such a fun character, and as like a filmmaker who does like a lot more like documentary long form stuff, working with people who are actually like fans of the camera and love being filmed is actually such a dream, and you can have so much fun. If you look at all the advertisement he does for his residency at Hyatt Beef, I was very jealous of the creative team that put that together. It's very funny, like the stuff he does is just completely off the hook, batshit crazy. But yeah, it's just really fun to do.
Awesome. Right, yeah. I wasn't quite willing to let us to finish on time there. Thanks, both. Thanks everyone for attending, and we will see you same time next week.